to Critical Political. I'm Corey, and you're watching The Political Void. This week, we are delving into the arrests of activists, how Antifa has become the boogeyman, and how this affects First Amendment rights in the United States. Here we go. The history of suppressing dissent in the United States highlights a recurring tension between government authority and the First Amendment. In 1798, the Sedition Act criminalized the publication of false, scandalous, and malicious writing targeting the government, leading to the imprisonment of several political editors. This pattern continued during World War I with the Espionage Act of 1917 and the Sedition Act of 1918. Citizens were jailed for distributing anti-war literature, a practice the Supreme Court initially permitted by ruling that speech could be restricted if it posed a clear and present danger. In the 1950s, we ushered in the Red Scare, characterized by government committees blacklisting and investigating thousands of Americans, primarily in government sectors and Hollywood, over suspected Communist Party affiliations, which heavily curtailed freedoms of association, belief, and speech. By the 1960s, civil rights protests faced significant opposition as Southern police used breach of peace statutes to arrest peaceful marchers and speakers. However, the Supreme Court eventually reversed many of these convictions, establishing more robust legal safeguards for the rights of protests and assembly. The Supreme Court has established definitive boundaries regarding the government's authority to restrict speech over several landmark cases. In Tinker v. Des Moines, the court addressed the suspension of Iowa public school students who wore black armbands to protest the Vietnam War. Ruling in favor of the students, the court famously asserted that constitutional rights to freedom of expression are not abandoned at the schoolhouse gate. Protections were further expanded in 1989 with Texas v. Johnson, which involved a protester arrested for burning the American flag. The Supreme Court determined that flag burning constituted protected symbolic speech under the First Amendment, maintaining that government may not prohibit an expression merely because society finds it offensive. Additionally, New York Times Corporation v. Sullivan provided critical safeguards for the media. After an Alabama court levied heavy fines against the newspaper for an advertisement critical of local law enforcement, the Supreme Court overturned the decision, fortifying the press's right to report on public officials. Many countries arrest activists. Authoritarian and conflict-ridden states frequently jail dissidents to silence them. Democratic nations also arrest activists who break the law during protests. In Vietnam, the government heavily uses broadly worded laws to crush dissent and arrest journalists, legal petitioners, and environmentalists. In Libya, armed groups arrested international humanitarian activists who were attempting to deliver aid. Saudi Arabian authorities target women human rights defenders who advocate for basic freedoms. The Israeli Navy has detained hundreds of international activists participating in sea flotillas, trying to reach Gaza. The United Kingdom government has given record-long prison sentences to climate protesters for peaceful but disruptive actions. In the United States, police have arrested demonstrators at environmental protests and political rallies. By the way, this video is sponsored by the like button. Click it below to find out more. At present, we are witnessing a persistent struggle for a vital segment of the American soul. What was once considered established law or a firm precedent has reemerged as a conflict for a new era, representing a clash over the fundamental principles upon which this nation was established. Linking 15 direct action Minnesota activists to the Antifa movement, federal prosecutors have issued an indictment following their opposition to ICE's Operation Metro Surge. These individuals are charged with several crimes, including conspiracy to impede federal officers, with the United States Department of Justice alleging the use of blockades, projectiles, and stalking as illegal tactics to interfere with immigration enforcement. The government characterizes the movement as a sophisticated, multi-layered network of affinity groups, like the Black Cat Workers Collective, which they claim blend anarchist and communist views to engage in physical confrontation and militant class struggle. The defendants are confronting federal charges of assault, stalking, destruction of government property, and conspiracy to injure or impede federal officers. According to prosecutors, the activists exploited and infiltrated lawful protests to conduct these illegal activities, citing social media posts and online chats regarding vehicle blockades and the tracking of ICE agents as evidence. The 95-page indictment details signal message logs and the use of license plate databases, which the prosecution frames as a nefarious military-style operation, despite defense arguments that such documentation was a necessary response to the threat of state violence and surveillance. Operation Metro Surge, launched by the government to address immigration violations, has resulted in mass arrests and significant protests, drawing scrutiny from international watchdogs and local agencies. While 12 individuals have been apprehended, civil rights advocates and defense attorneys contend that the DOJ's use of broad conspiracy charges is an attempt to chill First Amendment rights and criminalize dissent. Critics argue that the Trump administration is weaponizing anti-terrorism statutes, originally designed for high-level threats, to target activists for their ideology, as seen in the Prairieland, Texas case, where similar activism resulted in sentences of up to 100 years. Notably, similar charges in related cases have already been downgraded or dismissed by the government due to instances of prosecutorial misconduct. Julian Bond said, "Anytime someone carries a picket sign in front of the White House, that is the First Amendment in action." That's all for this week. Until next time, remember, silence is compliance. Your voice is vital. Stand up, speak out, strike back. They don't know what they started. If you appreciate this content, please like, share, and subscribe for updates. Ring the bell. Your support truly helps the channel.